What? It says an error occurred. Okay, here we go. It's with one particular area. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. While you are looking at Just Two Dads today, it was not the usual two dads because our good friend Brian Altunian is a bit under the weather, and but I have the pleasure of having one of the friends of the show and a previous guest join me today. That is none other than Mr. Rob Gorski, and we're going to get started in just a few. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. Once again, welcome. Whether you are joining us live on Facebook, catching us after the fact on our YouTube page, or wherever you get your podcasts on the multiple platforms that we're on, including Apple, Stitcher, Google, Spotify, or AM radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands on WSDX. Either way, we welcome you. And as I mentioned at the intro, I'd like to welcome to the show again, Rob Gorski, the Autism Dad.
How's it going, man? I was trying to adjust my chair because you're making me feel really short. And I've never felt short before because I'm always like the tallest person in the room. I don't know what the deal is.
You know, I love this chair, and I don't think you can see. Can you see that? So let's see all that. I love that, but my wife got it for me. I think it was my birthday, like last year. But for some reason, it's starting to like drop down, and like
the hydraulics.
The hydraulics. I'll have to like adjust it and everything. So I'm subconscious about that. So by the time before we finished, I'll be back down here again.
I had these. They're called ergos. They're sensory chairs, right? They sent them out to me a couple years ago, and they're like those. They look like a giant kind of plastic spring, but they're filled with air. And I was doing an interview one time, not paying attention to the weight limit on the thing, and I was sitting like right here, and as the show is going on, the air is seeping out the bottom of it, and I'm just sort of going lower and lower and lower and lower and lower and lower and lower in real time. It's pretty funny.
That's crazy. Well, anyway, our topic today, we're going to be talking about change versus comfort. I've been thinking a lot about, work in the space of both personal development and financial education and literacy. And I always say that so much of what we need in the special needs community and the things that are specialized for us are things that everybody needs anyway. And I've been really thinking a lot lately about the idea of, changes a part of life, and those changes come whether we like it or not. And for those of us that dare to, do anything more than we're already doing, to grow, to have some type of, whether you're talking about massive success financially or just peace of mind and comfort, or just being able to have your day match your vision for it, if you have one, you tend to have a battle for your attention. There's a battle between the life that we have versus the one that we want. And more times than not, if we're not focused enough, the life that we have is winning that battle on a daily basis. And for many of us, the life that we want kind of goes back into the corner and retreats, doesn't come out fighting, and sometimes will not only leave the ring, but then leave the arena altogether. And that's just everyone in general in life, generally speaking. When you add to it the special needs component, whether you're part of a strong union by way of a marriage or committed relationship of some kind, or single, depending on the diagnosis of the person that you're caring for or your child, that can dictate how much you even think about the fight, how much you have, how much of a vision, if any, you have for a life beyond the one that you have. And in many cases where you just leave the arena altogether. And sometimes it can be really tempting to just, I just want to be comfortable. That's it. I don't want to, we can choose to settle or survive versus thriving. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're hoping that people will, be, giving information on the comments. And love to hear what you have to say about that as well, Rob. And I want to say hello to Jordan Altunian, who has tuned in, which we appreciate. Brian's daughter. Thank you very much, Jordan. Can you hear me, Rob? Oh. Can you hear me, Rob?
Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
You still can't hear me?
If it's...
Hold on 1 second. Let's do this. Now can you hear me? All right. Have no idea what happened.
I still have.
That's tech. I can hear you perfectly when you speak, though. I'm going to make sure I let you know that. Jordan, if you can let me know since you're tuning in, if you can hear Rob as well. I'm going to suggest that Rob sign out and then come back in. And hopefully that will remedy the problem, because I can hear him fine, but for whatever reason, he can't hear me.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay. I'll just bypass all this stuff. I don't know what's going on, but I hear you now.
Oh, okay, good. You can hear me. Okay, good. Well, it's interesting. I was just talking. I had a conversation with someone earlier. We were talking about in most of the conversations that we've had with people, I think we're one of the few people that does our show live. And between that and dogs barking in the background, those are the challenges that come with it. But I'm not sure where I cut out there. We were talking about the battle for the life that we have versus the one that we dream about, even if we are daring to even dream about it, because some of us, depending on what we're dealing with a diagnosis, don't even find ourselves in a situation where we have any kind of aspirations. And when you add to that the special needs component, that becomes twice as difficult for most of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I caught it. I caught up to about right there when you had cut out on me. So
up to that point. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I could start by saying, like, for instance, for those that don't know, you are a single dad to 3 boys, 2 of which are on the autism spectrum and are young adults. So, and you've been very candid about the challenges that you face just in life, generally speaking, in terms of depression and things like that. Yeah. Outside of special needs, but then how the special needs component, being a caregiver and parent to boys with special needs, has added to that. So let me ask you, do you find yourself being aspirational and thinking about more than where you are, or just a desire to be comfortable?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
or maybe it's a battle. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a battle because it's probably not always one or the other.
Yeah. Well, I've been struggling a lot with the depression the last, couple of months. And I was recently diagnosed with ADHD at age 43, which has thrown me for a loop on that. That's a tough thing to kind of process. Not a big deal, but it's still one more thing.
Right.
My kids have, kids are at an age where they can sort of decide a lot of things for themselves, because they're in their teens, and my oldest is an adult. And we talked about parenting and stuff. And it is difficult. I don't know how to answer that question, honestly. I don't very often look to the future, I guess, if that makes sense. I find myself very much living moment to moment sometimes, because when you are dealing with things like depression, you can't see beyond the moment that you're in, you know? And so I try to force myself to see like 10-minute chunks. And you know, some of the challenges that my kids are dealing with right now, some of the emotional challenges or challenges they have with their mom, they exacerbate that, right? It just becomes weight that you carry around. And I would love to be comfortable. I would. If I said I was comfortable being exactly where I am, that probably isn't true.
That's good.
But it's hard to find a path forward when you can't find the path forward. If that makes.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so let's do this then. So you have no idea how big a deal it is, and hopefully those of you that are watching that are, you know, that may be single, or, you know, I live in a very aspirational environment, and had an aspirational mindset, come from an aspirational environment, and my wife supports that. But, you know, for anyone that's listening that, you know, your aspiration is to get through the day and be lucky enough to see tomorrow, then you are who we're hoping to connect with, as well as those that are very aspirational and clear about what they want to do and fighting for it. But you have no idea how big a deal it is, Rob, to say, you know, you give me so much, because to begin with, you're like, I don't know how to answer that. And I get the sense that there's a chance that I add some value just by what you said, because you said, I don't know how to answer that. I'm not sure. And on one hand, I'm living minute to minute, don't know how much I aspire for the future. But then you turn around and said, if I were to tell you that I was comfortable now, that's probably not true. That's a big deal, because you can at least say change is something that you seek.
Absolutely. Totally. You know, a lot of people don't like change in their life. I was the person that would always rearrange the living room when I would get into like a funk or something, because I like change. You know, I have like, I don't know, a dozen different phone cases. I don't know where's that. Phone cases for my phone, because I like to change things up every once in a while and just sort of bring something new, kind of refresh everything. The struggle is that when you are when you are a single parent, whether you're a single parent to autistic kids or just, you know, anybody, and you are truly on your own, you know, there is no help. Like, you have family that can step in and help and support you and whatever, but you don't have the help of the other parent, right? They're just not involved.
Right.
All of that responsibility falls on me, which is okay. You know, I mean, that is what it is. I'm not upset about that, but it does wear you down. You know, it sort of erodes bits and pieces of you away as you go. And I think when you combine that with things like a proclivity to be depressed, it sort of it makes it difficult to navigate. Like, you know, just the space that I've been in, I'll just say the last four or 5 weeks. It's hard to get out of bed in the morning sometimes. Like, that's a victory for me. I had, and this is really, some of it's ADHD stuff, and then some of it is just, I think, burnout from doing this for as long as I have been and not really having that support.
Right.
There were 3 things that I needed to get done that should have been done years ago. When I adopted, when I adopted Gavin, and the courts changed his name, that was like 10 years ago, like literally 10 years ago. And for whatever reason, his name wasn't updated properly with Social Security. And so his name never changed with Social Security. And I tried a couple of times to get it fixed, but there's all that bureaucracy and red tape, and it was like hours on hold on the phone. Nobody could tell you what to do. And I just gave up because he was a minor. What does it matter? It wasn't impacting anything.
Right.
Well, he's an adult now, needs to get his state ID so that he can get a job and do job training and all this other stuff. You can't get a state ID when your birth certificate doesn't match your social security card, right?
Right.
And so it took me an embarrassingly amount of time to get that addressed. And I just got it fixed last week, and it's not because it's not that I didn't want to get it fixed. It's not that I was incapable of getting it fixed. It's that I am constantly triaging life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wrote this article called Juggling Plates or Broken Plates. And it was designed to sort of help parents be kind to themselves. And it's advice that I don't follow myself because I'm a hypocrite when it comes to that kind of stuff. Do what I say, not as I do. But
we'll rephrase that and say that you have a challenge with that. That's sort of the first step. Yeah, that's the first step, because I mean that it's a work in progress, which we all are.
Correct.
So don't beat yourself up.
And the whole juggling plates thing came about because when you're a parent dealing with a child with additional needs, you have all of these added responsibilities on top of the responsibilities that everybody else has for everyday life, right?
Right.
And what happens a lot of times is what everybody else prioritizes, like work or, maintaining a house or grocery shopping or paying the bills. We can't always prioritize those same things because those additional challenges that we have to deal with are often in our face, needing to be addressed in the moment. And it pulls you away from all these other things. And so what I would do is I would be really hard on myself, and I would beat myself up because I felt that I was not living to a standard that I see, my siblings at, or my nieces and nephews, like were there. I feel like I wasn't providing a good life for my kids because there was always something that was pulling me away from the things that I needed to do to move forward. And so I analogize it as, it's like juggling plates, right? And I have so many plates that I'm having to keep up in the air, but in real time, all throughout the day, there are people who are flinging new plates at me. And in real time, I have to decide whether or not I need to keep that plate up in the air. And if I have to keep that plate up in the air, which one of the ones that I'm juggling now can hit the floor and break?
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're triaging all these things in real time. And what happens a lot of times, and I'm very guilty of this, is I tend to focus on all the stuff that's on the floor, all the broken pieces that I've let hit the floor, and not the number of things that I'm still maintaining to keep from hitting the ground.
Right.
And when you do that for long enough, I think that you can. I wouldn't say it's comfort. Like I said, I wouldn't say I'm comfortable where I'm at, but it's safe.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, right. Well, first of all, give yourself some credit for having a certain amount of self-awareness, because self-awareness is a huge thing. It's important for anyone that has any success doing anything, because if you don't have a level of self-awareness, you're living, like the old children's tale, the emperor's clothes. The emperor has no clothes on, but no one wants to tell him otherwise. No one wants to say anything, so everyone's acting like he's fully clothed, right? And I think there's a certain amount of that we go through on a daily basis, just generally speaking, in life. And so without any aspirational thoughts or motives or anything like that, and sometimes it's easier said than done, and there's no judgment here at all. But if we don't aspire to do more than we are doing, if we don't aspire to have more than we have, or give more than we have, then what we're doing is sort of, we're not only settling, but we're taking for granted the gift of life which has been given to us. And in many cases, though, that gift comes with a whole bunch of, challenges. And again, no judgment from anyone that is just feeling like, look, I just want to be comfortable. Because, there was a time where I wanted a 9-to-5. I wanted to know where my checks were coming from, not even where they were coming from, but a certain amount of money. And I wanted to be able to knock off work at 5 o'clock and go play basketball, go to a club at night, and and have the weekends to do whatever I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, give me that. I want nothing else. And that was after working in retail for a while, where I was working retail hours, which means that they were not predictable at all. And then over time, I wanted something more. I decided, well, you know what I want is I want something that I can control. So we're at different places in our lives. And at that time, I was single also. So let me ask you this, then.
Yeah.
If you can, you know that you would want more. You mentioned that you're more focused on the moment versus the day or anything beyond that. If you could change, and you've never struck me as a person that's material, but let's say from an aspirational standpoint, start thinking about and explain for us, if you will, the things you might want for yourself, for your boys that you don't have in terms of change in your life. And
that's easy.
And then, see, now you're lighting up. So start with that. And then after, let's move after from that to that which you might want as far as what you can give or contribute.
Yeah. So it's not so much that I don't have aspirations or goals, because I do. The problem is, for me, I mean, depression plays a role in that. When you're battling mental health stuff, it's very hard to see a future when you can't see the next 10 minutes, right? You can't see beyond that fog. But, one of the big goals that I want is I want to give my kids the childhood that I had, when I was growing up, where they can play outside and not have to worry about, I mean, they're older now, but I want to grow the business, which is actually doing really well. It's been a very positive thing.
Tell everybody just a little bit about that too, if you will, because again, some people are, what they're living on is what they receive and from in terms of benefits, and they're a caregiver. Some people have turned what they know into a business or a service, and and so people can get inspiration from that.
Yeah. So my camera keeps panning in and out too fast. I started my blog about, 13, 14 years ago, something like that. And used that as a means of sort of venting. And it was very therapeutic for me. It's how I coped with life and whatever. And I learned that it was helping other parents. And so I guess it was sort of inspirational for a lot of other parents. And so I just kept doing that and working. I was a fire medic for a long time until I got hurt. And there were just things that were fulfilling emotionally, feeling that need for me, but they were not providing for our daily, needs.
Right. You got to eat.
You got to eat. Yeah. And I used to feel guilty about the idea of trying to monetize anything that I was doing, because I felt that it sort of compromised the integrity and whatever. But I reached a point, especially after I became a single parent and I was forced to do everything on my own. I didn't have the ability to do the odd jobs, or I really had to sort of buckle down and make a bunch of decisions. And I decided, you know what, like, I've got this large following, I've got this platform that I can do really positive things on, and there's stuff that I can do to monetize that. And so I started dabbling in sort of digital marketing and helping other people get their voice heard, and that started to become profitable, and it helped me pay the bills. It wasn't enough, but it was enough to give me some breathing room. And, I was able to become more self-sufficient at that point. And eventually it grew into the podcast, which is doing really well. And I'm working on a sponsorship deal right now for like a 6-month, sponsorship for every episode for the next 6 months or a year. I'm not sure yet, but now I'm doing pretty good. I'm back on my feet for the most part, and, growing, which is good. It's overwhelming because I'm me, but it's still positive. And you can't always, but I think that it's important to try and make the best of what you have been given. And that's sort of what I did. I mean, I had to leverage my experience and, what my role in my kid's life is, and really try and create something that wasn't there, I guess, in order to do what I loved doing, what I was passionate about, which is, my kids and then helping other families, and be able to make that into something that allows me to grow, reach more people, and provide for my kids, give them a better life.
Right. Good. I'm glad you mentioned that, because we had a conversation. I've had a conversation with several people too, where there's a guest that we had on a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about the idea of, guilt that one may feel monetizing any attempt that they make to add value to the life of other people. And I think that may be something that we struggle with in the special needs community more so than any place else, because it's special needs. It can seem exploitative, whatever the case is. But the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, we pay money to people, corporations, and entities that add value in a whole bunch of other ways. And if you're truly adding value, there isn't something wrong with monetizing that. As a matter of fact, because the alternative is to just do everything that you do completely free of charge and stay where you are in your life and never move forward. Now, if your mission, serviced, and especially crusade based and change based, and that's the value that you add, and then if on top of that there are things that you are in fact doing that are free of charge, then there's no reason to feel bad about charging a fair fee for that, receiving profit, and then adding value to people's time. As a matter of fact, the amount that we earn is very much determined by the level of value that we add to people, especially from a long-term basis. If you have a business where it's very short-sighted and you're exchanging, dollars versus exchanging energy and value, that's a totally different story. So, for those of us that are sitting, at home and sometimes we're trying to figure out how do you get from point A to point B, goals add value to people's lives. Aspirations do. And so, again, we understand the temptation to be very comfortable, but that's what people, that makes a difference. That's everything. So let me ask you this then, and maybe somebody will get an idea. Oh, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I do think it's important to kind of clarify, because there are people who are comfortable where they're at and just don't either want to do better or don't want to make a move forward or whatever. And there are people who are, a lot of times those people are just sort of burned out and they're in survival mode. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of where I've been for a long time. And I've just started kind of coming out of it over the last, 2 years, year and a half, maybe. Mm-hmm. And, I look back, and from the outside looking in, if you didn't know the story and you didn't know what was going on, you would just see someone who's got, no interest in doing laundry or doing the dishes or making his bed or, paying the bills that are on the table or, whatever. It is, the reality is that you can become so overwhelmed that you become paralyzed and you just don't know where to start and you don't know what to do. Right. And so you do nothing. Right. And that's a large part of where I have found myself. And that's an ADHD thing too, that I didn't know about. But so I just wanted to, because I don't want anybody to hear that and feel like it's sometimes it's a choice, other times it just is what it is, and you can try all you want to, but you just are so burdened, you're so overwhelmed, you're so depressed that you just can't. And reaching out for help, which is hard to do sometimes, but it's important that you do that in those moments so that you can get somebody to help motivate you to pick you up and bring you out of that.
Yeah. No, most definitely. And you kind of answered the question as to where I was going too. All right. But I wanted to touch on the other thing too, which is, people will think, and I talked about this in the last episode that Brian and I were talking about goals and the importance of them, generally speaking in life, but especially in our community where we're challenged with everything, which is that people may think that the attainment or bringing to fruition a goal or a dream has tremendous value. And it does, especially if you get to find out how it impacts people that you would never even have thought of. A mentor of ours by the name of a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet, who's huge in the personal development space. His father had, he's very candid about it. His father had a drinking problem for years, got sober and was sober for like the second half of his life, and inspired Ed in a whole lot of ways, and is the reason why he does what he does in the personal development space right now. He has a new show that's about to launch and everything on oh gosh, it's on an NBC streaming affiliate. I don't remember the name of it, but the point is, he stopped, and he shared with us that he stopped and thought about the fact that, you know, in the world of Alcoholics Anonymous, when a person becomes sober, what they do is they become a sponsor for somebody else. And whoever that person is, he has no idea who it is. But he said it hit him one day that whoever the person was that sponsored his father, that person is responsible for all of the value that he has added to other people's life. That person may have passed on and has no idea. So there is something to be said for the value that we get from attaining our goals and dreams, especially if we inspire someone to chase their own. But it's been said that dopamine, which is the chemical in the body that is produced, you know, when we have satisfaction, that we have a bigger hit of that during the pursuit of a goal, dream, or task than we do when we accomplish it. So, you know, so there's something to be said for just the pursuit of improvement, and the journey, not even the destination. And so again, for those that are challenged with, you know, caregiving, and they're like, look, I'm trying to just get through today. There's immeasurable value in thinking beyond today. Like, okay, if you get through today, think about getting through today. Okay. But in the back of your mind, it's worthwhile to say, okay, if I get through today, what am I going to do tomorrow? Or what would I do if these things were in place? How great would it be if, you know, and there's something to be said for, you know, there being just, you know, daydreaming and nothing, you know, taking place. But a balance between the two is beyond worthy, though.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the dopamine thing, because that's actually, in my case, well, in people who have ADHD, it's a dopamine thing. And you're not operating properly because your brain is lacking the dopamine that it needs to motivate yourself to do these things. And I you know, any little victory, I've always been one to celebrate every little victory, especially like when my kids were younger. You know,
that's huge.
Things that people would think are ridiculous, but like, you know, different foods touched on the same plate and he still ate it. Like chicken nugget was not the same color as the other ones, kind of off shapen, but they ate it anyways, right?
Right.
I mean, those are victories that people would just kind of laugh at, like, why is that a big deal? But when you have like nothing else, you know, that's a huge deal. When every day getting your kid to eat is a struggle, you know. And so I think it is important to focus on those little victories, because it is that shot of dopamine, you know. It gives you, and I didn't realize the biomechanics behind it at the time, but it's a shot of dopamine, and it gives you that strength to just get back up and push through for tomorrow. And you know, we were talking about Kate Swenson earlier. She has this sort of mantra we've talked about a couple of times. She does this, you know, you can quit today, but you get up tomorrow and you try one more thing. And then you can try, you know, you do the same thing next day. You get up and you do one more thing, and you try one more thing, and you push, you know, you open one more door, and eventually you're going to get to where you need to be, or you're going to find what you're looking for, or get to where you're supposed to be.
I'm laughing. No, go ahead.
Well, and I try to you know, hear that voice in the back of my head when I'm struggling, because it is, you know, just do one more thing, because that one more thing can lead to one more thing, which can lead to one more thing. But if you do nothing, then nothing's going to change. You know?
I'm laughing because I'm so deeply appreciative for the synergy that takes place here. I don't know how many people believe in something greater than themselves, or whatever the case may be. I mentioned Ed Milet earlier. There's never been a conscious plan to let's promote this thing here on the show. And everything we do is by, off the cuff. But I mentioned Ed Milet earlier. The network I was referring to is called Nosy, where his show is going to be streaming, and the date is August 22nd. But I'm going back to it again because not just because he's a mentor, and friend to us, but the title of his book that I was referring to is The Power of One More. That's the name of the book. Yeah. That's the name of the book. Now, you didn't even know I was going to bring that up.
No idea.
No. And I'm reading it very slowly. It's a second book, but the whole idea is like, things compound by taking that, just that one more step. So the fact that you mentioned that with our mutual friend, Kate Swenson.
I got that from this book.
That's her book, right? Who's going to be on at a future date. That's a tremendous amount of synergy amongst like-minded individuals. Yeah. But there's something to be said for it. And there's a breakdown of how, again, just how the idea of getting from point A to point B and then thinking beyond, everything that we see in front of us, from these phones, the technology that we use here, every single thing, even for the most part, us, everything that is before our eyes began behind somebody else's eyes, in somebody's head. Every single thing. Every single thing around us. And it can get heavy into another conversation, another direction, but if you believe in a higher power, the trees, the planet itself, everything that's here started someplace else. And so that means that if anything is in your head or your heart, it wouldn't be there if it didn't have a possibility of coming to some sort of fruition. And the reward that you would get from aspiring to make it real and bring it to life is immeasurable. And then you have no idea the manner in which you're going to impact people. I like to think that Brian and I are, big thinkers, and you continue to try and stretch our vision and that kind of thing. But I already know for a fact, because of what I've seen in other people's situations, that no matter how big you think, there are possibilities that come with the fruition of your goals and dreams that are bigger than you might ever imagine.
Yep.
And that's with the human experience, generally speaking. But then if you look at any community that is misrepresented, which in our case is the special needs community, the value of that is 10 times more. And I want to go back to what you were talking about, all victories, because that's why they always say that so much in life is about how we respond to what happens to us, not what happens. And the thought that it's happening for us versus to us is another way of flipping that. Because think about it, you would probably have no appreciation for all victories, big and small, comparative to what you do have, if it wasn't for your son. I know that the same thing is true of me, and I've never ever once felt like, oh, you're probably going to think this is not a big deal, but it's a big deal to me. Or it's a big deal to us. We just, whether it's a word we're talking about, a level of independence, body training, whatever the case might be. Like for us, for instance, our son Elijah, this summer more than ever has wanted to go to the movies a lot. That's not something we do a lot of, but this summer there's been a handful of movies that he wants to go see, and they're usually things that are animated and somewhat kid oriented. I mean, he's 16, but I love all those animated movies anyway. But he picked out a movie that, funny enough, my good friend and co-host Brian had told me about, called Where the Crawdads Sing. And it is a movie that's produced by Reese Witherspoon. So Elijah picks up the iPad and will just look through different things and get fixated with certain things. And right now he's into Reese Witherspoon. And so as a result of the press that she's doing to promote the movie, he's aware of it. Brian and I had a conversation. He had some friends that were independent film producers, and they're like, oh, let's have dinner and go to a movie. So he figures it's going to be, maybe Thor or something like that. They pick Where the Crawdads Sing, and his thought was, all right, here we go, some artsy movie, I guess, whatever. And he said he was surprised at how good it was. And for us, the victory in what came in Elijah picking that movie. So we're telling him it's not animated, and Reese Witherspoon is not in the movie. Do you understand that? And he's like, yeah, sure. And we're like, okay. And we've evolved enough, and my wife is better at it than me, so I should say I've evolved. She's always been there in, again, the benefits from your challenges, which is, what? we roll dice and we go with it and see what happens. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it still will, because we're going to learn from it. And sometimes that's so much easier said than done. But we went to see that movie, which is not necessarily a kid's movie. He sat down and was engaged from beginning to end with the movie. Now, has he processed and does he understand everything that, that took place with the storyline? No, but I'm still trying to figure out what it is that engaged him before seeing it and what made him want to do that and sat there the whole time. And then on top of that, we had a good time and saw a very, very touching story as well. So you never know what you're going to get. So in that case, he doesn't even look at that as an aspiration or a goal, but he gets something out of the pursuit. He gets something out of it coming to fruition. And then so do we. And you never know what's going to take place.
Yeah. You never know what's around the corner. And, I think a lot of times you can kind of be conditioned to always expect the worst, especially when you're kind of, living in this realm. It's when's the next shoe going to drop? It's what's the next medical crisis that's going to happen? What's the next parenting drama that you're going to have to deal with, or financial crisis, or like whatever it is. And so it is kind of, it can be easy to just stay in one place because what's in that place. It's predictable, it's safe, right? But if you live there for too long, that was my dogs. If you live there,
yours are quiet compared to mine.
Well, that's because it was a little one that was barking. The big one, we just got a new dog a couple weeks ago. You would know if he was barking. But if you live there for too long, you miss out on all these opportunities that you don't even know are just around the next corner. And so it's you have to somehow find. You're allowed to take a break. You're allowed to be comfortable, but if you stay comfortable for too long, you don't know what you're missing, potentially.
Yeah.
So I try to stay focused on that. And I, especially with my kids, because my kids are very black and white and they're very rigid at times in the way that they view the world. And
it comes with the spectrum. Yes.
It's a very autism thing. And so I'm always having to remind them, like, guys, just because it happened today doesn't mean that every Thursday this is going to happen. You can't, they generalize too much. And I think it's a lot of what happens with me is I generalize. And, I've tried a million times to make this better and I can't do it. So I'm just going to stop because it's just too frustrating. When all it takes is one more time to, overcome whatever that obstacle was. But I don't know that because I don't try. I give up. I get overwhelmed and I shut down. And it's important that that we don't do that long term. You find a path forward.
Yeah, we have to take a lesson is no good if we don't
learn anything.
Practice what it teaches us. And we have some dear friends. Shout out to Taven and Shakina Jones, who are actually from Columbus, Ohio.
Nice.
Where you're from. But they probably, I don't know, it wasn't quite a decade ago. Their son was in Elijah's class, and they were having a birthday party at a local bowling alley. And this is a time where Elijah, because there's always the clothing of choice, there's the food of choice, there's the texture of choice. It's always the flavor of the month. And in the world of autism, a month is more than 30 days when it comes to those things. Yep. And one of the things that he was in the middle of was like, I don't even remember what they were, but there was a certain pair of shoes that he wore and he didn't wear anything else. And my wife would get like more than one pair, so that as he outgrew it, he would, hop on to the next. And I was thinking of the clothes, but I was also thinking of the shoes. I was like, you can't go to a bowling alley and wear, your shoes. So, and I caught myself in the middle of it. And I think my wife, again, was the one that was kind of like, well, let's see. Because when they invited us, I was like, he doesn't do that. And that's where you're kind of like, we don't do that. That's not what we do. And so you get so rigid and stuck in your whatevers. And we went. And I've always thanked them eternally for this. my friends Taven and Shakina, where we went. And as we get there, I'm just kind of, okay, we'll see what happens. And as everybody's beginning to bowl, I'm asking Elijah, do you want to do that? He wanted to, actually. I think he told me first. I was like, great, but you have to go put on those shoes. And he was like, okay. I was like, what? So we go to rent the shoes. And what blew me away to begin with is that there's shoes that his mom, that my wife had bought him, that would go to Goodwill or whoever, because he'd never get to wearing them and his feet would grow.
Yep.
Right? Like, so we can't get you to put your feet in some brand new shoes, but you're willing to take your feet and stick them in some shoes that other people have worn just to get a new experience. And that's exactly what he did. And I was blown away and have always been in the deepest gratitude for that moment. And what it and other moments with him have taught me is that you always go, you fight the urge to, well, this doesn't happen again. When you talk about a fight between the life you have and the one that you want doesn't always have to consist of a mansion or even a house that's paid for free and clear or having any material. It might consist of, your child trying something new, whatever the case might be.
It's all relative.
It is. And it's always there. It's a constant fight.
And again, Kate and I had a similar conversation where it's like, you set up expectations for what you think better is, right? And we have to redefine what we feel success is or what we feel better is, because better might not be that, your kid's going to be independent and live on their own. Maybe better is they wear shoes, or they are able to expand their menu to the point where they'll eat 5 things instead of 1 thing. I mean, we have to be open to what better means, and it can be different for everybody, and that can evolve over time. So
that should evolve over time.
Yeah, that's what I pulled away from what you were saying.
Yeah, it should evolve over time. Matter of fact, evolution is important because there's a difference between being alive and living.
Yes.
Right? They are not the same thing. Yeah.
I've been alive, but I have not been living. Yeah.
Right. And evolution takes place whether we do or not. I mean, we can decide to sit still and, but the world around you is going to change. And if you don't evolve, then you're just alive and you're not living. And so why not take advantage of that gift that's given? Tomorrow is a whole bunch of things, but a promise is not one of them. And for me, the biggest thing about growing up, I had a fear of death. And now I'm at the point where I still can't say that I'm crazy about it, but my fear of an unfulfilled life is greater than my fear of death. To be able to have peace of mind that you didn't leave that much on the table. You didn't leave anything on the field of life, and you gave everything that you had is one of the most rewarding things possible, regardless of wherever you get. And look, I always like to say, I gravitate towards people that can admit that they're a work in progress, as opposed to the people that are like, I am an expert in so-and-so because I have done A, B, C, and D.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm fine with that if you can tell me I'm still working on E, F, and G. So if I am blessed with 500 years of life and don't age one more day physically, I'm never going to stop learning.
Right.
Because, and we should never, because the gift of another day is the opportunity to do that. And there's just no way to measure how much we impact people. And, so what I will share, and I think we may have talked about this on the show last week, you talk about being aspirational. In the work that Brian and I do, we met working in financial services, and we decided to cater a portion of what we do towards helping the special needs community. We've made a commitment to ourselves, and I think it's lofty. But over the next 12 months, we're committed to helping and impact a minimum of 1,000 families. And it's kind of a scary thing, but wonderfully scary. And my declaring that is an example of the growth and everything that I'm talking about in terms of evolution and change. Because once upon a time, if I had a goal or a desire, what I might do is, the closest I come to pursuing is write it down someplace and maybe tell a person or two in silence and quiet, whatever have you. Yeah, because then if it doesn't come true, then it's like, well, okay, nobody really knows. But I'm less concerned with that not taking place than I am of the pursuit and what people get from hearing me declare that. We're of tremendous value to each other. Well, as always, the hour goes by so fast, and I think this one went by even faster than usual. Maybe the technical glitches, added to that as well. But we come to the point in the show where we're asked the question. I don't know if your answer is going to be the same as it was when you were on before, if you remember the question or the answer. But everything we just talked about in terms of, change versus comfort, aspirations, progress, goals, improvement, our ability to change the world is so very much tied to our ability or our willingness to change ourselves. That dictates how good we're going to be at making the world a better place than it was when we entered it. With that said, if you can, give us one example of a thought or a belief that you held strongly and really truly believed that you no longer believe to be true. And there's no wrong answer.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right. I'm working on, I'm sorry, this Friday's episode of my podcast is, I started doing really short Friday episodes, just like 5 or 10 minutes long. And the topic is warrior parents. And one of the things that I used to believe in warrior parents, that, you're an autism warrior mom or whatever. But I have taken a different approach to that as of late. And I think that it's important. I have changed my view on that. And the reason I do that is because I feel like when we build people up to be something they're not, when they inevitably hit that wall of human limitation, it can be a very far fall from grace kind of thing. So my approach to that now is like, look, I'm not some kind of like warrior dad. I am a guy who is very human, very, very human, who is very flawed, who is struggling a whole lot to try and get through a lot of this stuff. And I do it because I love my kids, not because I have some superhuman power or some innate ability to do better than what anybody else can do. I do the only thing that I know. And that's largely the result of my kids, because for the longest time, I was told, you're just this superhuman dad. I don't know how you do it, all this other stuff. And over time, there's a part of you like that kind of gets in the cracks, and a part of you starts to believe that to some extent and starts to expect that from yourself. And I was expecting myself to be able to do all of these things. I'm supposed to be this superhuman warrior dad, whatever. And reality is I am not that. And I had to really change the way that I thought about that, because there was a lot of deprivation, right? Deprivation.
Both. It could be both. Yeah.
Where I was beating myself up because I wasn't living up to this warrior standard that, well-intentioned people were trying to build me up, whatever. And I have just decided that I'm human, and I'm going to accept my limitations and embrace my limitations. And I'm going to just do the best that I can. And I encourage other parents to look at things the same way, because at the end of the day, you're human, and you are going to only be able to do so much. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to, hit your wall. You're going to have your limitations. And it's more about how we overcome those limitations than whether we have them or not, and I just,
Gotcha.
I try to humanize. I'm big into humanizing parents at this point, because so many parents, I've had so many parents, dads especially, will approach me online, not like in real life, and they'll just say something like, like I'm doing such a terrible job because I see you have these 3 kids and you're struggling with this, but you still do it all the time and you're accomplishing this and that. And I'm like, whoa, like we got to be careful that, everything is subjective, everything is relative. And I could step into your shoes and not be able to survive 5 minutes, step into my shoes and do my job better than I am.
Right.
we don't understand. I think the impact that our words can have on people, and they always sort of step back and they're like, I never thought about it like that. And so that was just on the top of my head because that's what I'm thinking about for tomorrow, or Friday. But
but it fits. It makes sense. It makes sense. And we're always we're comparing all the time. But there's two things. So would you say that you've then redefined what it means to be a warrior? Because being a warrior, I think when someone thinks that being a warrior parent has anything to do with perfection, that's just inaccurate altogether because imperfection is part of the human experience. And what I find, as the older I get, is I relate more to the human experience. When I think of the people that I idolized as a kid, some of them that may still be alive, I find that I have more in common with them than anything else. And if there's anybody in whose presence I would be sort of still like starstruck, which is a very short list, I would be starstruck about what I have in common with them versus something that they have that's unattainable, and there's something else to remember as we think about the I don't want to say the sin of comparison, but it doesn't serve us. For anyone that's trying to get from point A to point B, which we talked about, the person who has come from point A and is getting to B is more equipped than anybody else to teach the average person about how to get to point B. In other words, especially if you're there, who you were and the challenges that you have and your faults are the very things that put you in a position to add value to people who are still in that place. So that's where we go back to things happening for us rather than versus to us. And at the end of the day, we always say this, just like we would say in special needs, we try to say that, the things that matter the very most to all of us, we all have them in common. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard. And with that, I want to make sure that we wrap it up. We're about just about out of time. And that's the very note that we usually end it on. Rob, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. And
thank you for having me again.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And I know we'll have you back again. You guys make sure that you can follow Rob at the Autism Dad on Instagram. And then what is your website again, Rob?
theautismdad.com will get you everywhere you need to go.
Okay, good. You'll find him there. Make sure that you go out and you support him. And I want to, as always, remind everyone that, disability or not, everyone wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to know that they matter. Everyone wants to be loved. And I want to make sure that I reach out and give a thank you to the women in my life without whom I would not be. That is my amazing wife, Laura, and my mom, Jan. And wherever you are, whether you're catching us after the fact or listening live, we thank you so much. Make sure you go to our YouTube page. We are Just Two Dads, and like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you soon. Thank you so very much again. And wherever you are, we love you.
Have a good week.
All right.